Um, so with that, I'm going to introduce our first reader. Our first reader is Michelle Ringle-Barrett. She is a cisgender white woman, mother, writer, educator, and experiential facilitator. Michelle is an active anti-racist feminist whose voice is used to highlight the emotional experiences of those who are oppressed. This is her first publication, which is pretty exciting. The title of Michelle's chapbook is The Once Whites of Women's Eyes. So please welcome Michelle Ringle-Barrett.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that very much. I want to thank everyone for being here, all the support from my friends and family and fellow poets. And on behalf of all of the poets who are reading tonight, I'd like to thank the Friends of Poetry and Celery City Chapbooks, and also the Kellogg Community College graphic design art students who created the cover art for all of our beautiful chapbooks. When women see themselves for the first time, they are girls caught by sun like rain released from waterlogged leaves. They are robin's breast, face up on concrete, studied in silence. And later, digging in rich black dirt, I reach gloveless into last season's broken down bodies and pull myself out, orange and fat and very much alive, and call my daughter over to see herself for the first time. When I look at my mother's dead body, I see my father's limpness warped beneath the bathwater. The snapdragon's mouth, pinched open, says to me, "Run away from knowing we are different." When asked to identify the body, will I know it's her? Not if her face is scarred by acid thrown for power, is rubbed raw by an accident of motion that remains in motion, is half hanging down mouth, forced open like sap, trying to escape the inside, because I have never seen her body. Ask me to identify what she carries, grocery bags cradling heavy she can put down, image of me shaving long hairs off the side of my son's face, sizzling body of butternut squash just pulled from oven's deep depth. The day you chose to die for Christopher Darling. You chose to hover above the earth, looking down at the ground that could never hold you. I'd rather sink down into that soft and forgiving and let cold, thick dirt cover my skin, make me something new. The breeze must have covered you that day as you prepared to look down one final time at a ground covered by concrete, crumbled bits of rock whose process to smoothness most of us will never see. I saw you for the last time hovering in a box so high from the floor I had to step up to see you. I too had to leave the earth. Your body must have swung back and forth that day with a lightness your brain never felt. And when it is my time, I hope to sink with a weight the world has never given me. I will be heavier when dead. Soil clings to roots no one thought to shake. My collective selves jammed into a bag, brush the brim begging to be seen before the knot is tied and all of me is carried off soil. This body cannot be replaced by potted plant placed in my mother's lap, a nurse's commodified condolences, better luck next time, as if she can't see the soil dropping on the polished floor, bodies, invasive species that smell when pulled, like a kitchen you have never inhabited, the kid next door, My dead cat's paws dragged through gravity by a nurse's hand around his middle, sweeping body off metal, table soil swept up. After my father wheeled my torn mother into the elevator and closed the door. Mother's hand full of dead weight, like my young breast would one day fill a man's hand, spilling over the way my breast will never weigh in a man's hand, but a handful is all I need, a boy once told me, to please a man. At least that seems as possible as nuthatch walking upside down away from heights I will never reach, down toward the only body I will ever know. Mural, Raleigh Airport, an interpretation for the security guard. Nature struck me breathless, like the moments my children were handed to me, all hope and hollow bird bones. All I could feel was feeling, and it felt free. You see, when I was a girl, I ran in open yards, through woods, with birds, around cornfields that defined our property line, into the pool area where he was drowning a litter of kittens in a bucket of water, one at a time. You see, I know what it means to ache. When the sirens began, I didn't know they were for me, standing here in all my whiteness, daring to stop in the middle of a corridor of hustling passengers to admire shards of glass, hand placed, one at a time, as if choosing the way life will go by following instinct. The scene, tall rushes waving in wind, birds perched in grass. I can't look away. Real art has the capacity to make us nervous. You see, I grieve for the Anthropocene. All right, one more. Tell them democracy is a parable handed down through knees fanning in and out like butterfly wings, inching sky. Milk, straw stuck inside, drink. The other empty, scraped by metal into twirls of raw meat to be chewed and swallowed. This like your whispers of love, my breasts you can touch whenever you want now that you own them. But let me, one sister rose in the night, barefooted, asleep, walked out the front door, souls searching for the horizon, only visible when the moon sets, deer looking for food in the dead of winter. Another time screaming on the bottom bunk while I float numb on the top, dress rehearsal for help she would need from me later. The end. When they ask, tell them truth shows itself in the darkness that sisters split between bunks only know is two wings spread open on opposite sides of the same body, two wings of the same party. Only a younger sister knows when her older sister is a siren speeding past the house, a trigger warning prompting us whose bodies send up flares, bright, burning, sparklers moving so close to the skin, we feel heat, whose bodies draw men's eyes toward us even when we don't want to. Tell them I would choose a woman if I had it to do over again, if only that is how it worked. Thank you.
Wow, fantastic reading, Michelle. Really well done. Tremendous. What a great way to start. Just so everybody knows, we're not going to be taking any breaks between the four poets. The only break will be for me to jump in and introduce. But there will be some time after the last reader for a bit of Q&A with the poets. So this way things will move along efficiently and no one will be here for too long. All right. Thanks again, Michelle. That was a fantastic reading and tremendous poems. Our next reader is Beth Bullmer. Beth earned a BA in theater and English creative writing from Alma College and spent several years competing nationally as a performance poet representing Kalamazoo on 2 national slam teams, as well as the 2004 individual World Poetry Slam. Elizabeth has taught writing workshops for all ages, including a summer camp at Washington Writers Academy, guest speaking for local students in ATIP, the academically talented youth program. And she has participated in WMU's Peace Jam as a featured performer and workshop facilitator. Her poems have been part of several art, poetry, ekphrastic collaborations with the KIA and other galleries, and she has previously self-published 3 chapbooks. The title of Beth's chapbook is Rhubarb Pie Without Berries. Please welcome Beth Bullmer.
Thank you, Scott. Origin story. I was born in a fancy ceramic 1970s ashtray, full of middle-class flair, carelessly fingered by strangers, snuffing out smokes of their own. If I'd gone one way, my bones would be brittle as seashells from the Delaware shore, my heart hollow as a crab claw sucked free of its meat. If I'd gone the other way, I'd be all vintage vases and cracked mahogany skin, dressed in glass doorknobs and doilies, hands splayed to array an assortment of Brock's creams, shiny cinnamon and butterscotch. You could slice me like a cold, fatty ham, have me on rye with thick-cut Swiss, bread and butter pickles, a glide of mustard, and a cream soda so I'd go down easy. Instead, I grew up covered in mud, toes poking out of my shoes, wearing the woods in my hair. I scaled trees like squirrels, built forts in bramble patches, and peed in holes in the ground. If anyone had looked, they would have found me blazing trails behind the elementary school on my shiny, bright red 10-speed, the shiniest thing I owned. My house was wrapped like a Christmas present in thin, inexpensive paper, decorated with recycled bows slightly smashed by years in the linen closet. On the inside, nothing but next year's supply of socks and underwear. The house was haunted from the inside out, its icy core cold as a dead star gaining gravity. At birth, I swallowed 5 siblings. They still live inside me, stealing my sweaters and swiping the last of the sweets. The older ones swindle dimes from the younger, pinch their ears while no one is watching. I have buried the sweat and grit of tropical warfare deep in my glands, silently pumping out warnings in Morse code. Malaria and morphine still sing in my blood, the sting of a bullet, my impertinent stare. Touch me. My skin is cooled lava rock from Mount Fuji, hollow bone, porous, tunneled. My ears, smooth pink canals spit out by the Pacific. All day I hear only ocean. My crocheted hair woven with willow wands, forsythia, and lilac smells of stale cigarettes. I speak like television static after the station has stopped broadcasting. I beep, I buzz, a constant hum. This is not a test. If you kiss me, I will taste of hunger, hard bread and salt, washed in 5 o'clock gin. But reach in any further, and you will find my belly is nothing more than an ash box. It's where I carry my dead. The next piece is after a Gail Martin poem by the same title and a game I often played as an icebreaker with friends, Two Truths and a Lie. My mother was an acolyte and my father was a minor deity. Or my father was a sex therapist and my mother was born blind. One of them lived in Plato's cave. The other one read Danielle Steele. Together, they wove magic carpets into walls, grew a garden with Jack's beans and plenty of onions. My mother made rhubarb pie without berries. I loved the bittersweet echo each bite left under my tongue. Sometimes their shadows sang me to sleep. My sister kept scorecards under her pillow. I never knew why. I danced on my toes in crepe tutus, only on stage, and always we planned elaborate vacations, painted them on the kitchen wall. No children were starving in Africa, so we never ate lima beans. On Sunday nights, we waltzed to Lawrence Welk. All of us talked to dead people. One of us was already dead. Someone built a labyrinth in the upstairs bathroom. Sister fell asleep for 50 years. Mother played the lead in a TV mini drama. Father turned purple as a Japanese eggplant. I huffed and puffed, but no one ever found their way out. The present moment. If there was no memory, there would be no time. Jason Shirka. It's not the summer I worked on Mackinac, the maggot-covered counters, my fingernails like boot treads compacted with grime, where I met more convicts than college students, and my sister got married on a balcony overlooking the lake 1 week before Big Al died, overdosed in employee housing, when fudge and horseshit started to smell the same. It's not the day I rode a Percheron draft past the Grand, or that night dancing with a boy my friend Margie had a crush on. I couldn't see his closed eyes, the bliss betraying his lips as he held me. It's not even the tender morning kiss of my lover still thick with sleep in my bed. The present moment is sticky fig juice, making a half-glued kindergarten project of my hands. It is the tart explosion of fresh raspberries in my mouth. No matter how the crunch of tiny seeds between my teeth reminds me of 6-year-old Quincy's berry-stained face and knees, or picking peaches with her and Diane, how they filled a whole bushel basket, giggling, before I selected even one perfectly swollen fruit. Delicate, unmarked skin. Not the 4 symmetrical gashes across my left forearm I used to call a tiger scratch. Primitive tattoo, long ago sewn into silvery scars, only visible now if I stay too long in the sun. Or my dad's Swiss Army knife, with serrated blade and plastic toothpick. How I still can't stand the sight of a man rolling a wooden stick from one wet corner of his dank mouth to the other. Not rinsing ashtrays in the kitchen sink, the scent of damp cigarettes making everything smell like compost and death. The present moment is soft cat fur sprouting between my fingers. It's the window-eyed rabbit confidently chewing grass beneath my rhododendron, behind which my first 2 cats are buried, with love notes written by my children, both swathed in baby blankets, beside decades of loss I have yet to name. And finally, etymology. I was born a beam of light, clothed in shadow. My heart a bright ember thrust from a quick current of dust and dreams, streaming through space, singing my soul down to earth. But I forgot. Gritty expectations pressed to my chest, sticks and stones waiting to be brandished, longing to be thrown. Immense hope, swollen, drained. A runoff ditch tunneled under driveways, cradling broken moments as if I may never again hold anything whole. Forever kissing fragile men, no profusion of my lips could keep them from collapsing inward like dying stars. I cherished the strength to swim against the undertow, the ease of surrender as they sucked me in. Regret, like a mouth full of moonshine, casting more mystery than light. I meant to be a Garden of Eden, teeming color and life, the hum of insects, webs dotted with dew, songbirds on branches, free as the open sky I intended to shine. A piercing sun behind my eyes, seeds splitting from my open palms. I keep trying to remember who I am, how I got here, where I'm going. Now and then I get a glimpse, huddle closer, cup the tenacious glow pulsing within. God leans near, gently blows. I flame, I rise. Thank you all so much.
Wow, that was fantastic. Really well done, Beth. Tremendous reading and amazing poems. Just keeps getting better. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Joy Gaines Friedler, and her chapbook is called Stone on Your Stone. Joy is also the author of 3 other books of poetry. Her most recent one, Capture Theory, is a Forward Review Indie Fab finalist and an Edward Hoffer Award finalist. Joy teaches creative writing for nonprofits and communities at risk in Southeast Michigan. She's had the honor of working with, among other communities, refugees from West and Northern Africa through Freedom House Detroit, as well as teaching poetry to male lifers at Lapeer Correctional Facility through the University of Michigan Prison Creative Arts Project. The title again of Joy's chapbook is Stone on Your Stone. Please welcome Joy Gaines Friedler.
Am I unmuted? Am I unmuted? Okay, great. Thanks. Wow, what company I am in tonight. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be able to read with Michelle and Beth and Diana, whose works are just extraordinary. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Friends of Poetry and Celery City. And the students who did this artwork. My book, I don't know if others are like this, but my book actually wraps around to the back. Like, how freaking cool is that? They just did an extraordinary job for me. Stone on Your Stone, the title refers to when you go to a cemetery and you put a stone on a stone of a cemetery. And that is just sort of it's sort of an announcement of an unbroken bond. I have been here, I am still here, our bond is unbroken. And this book is dedicated to my friend Jim and my friend Linda, who in the late 1970s, we all 3 lived together and traveled together. Jim died from AIDS in 1990, and Linda was killed by her husband 3 years later. So that's why I dedicated the book to them. So let me get started. Monarch metamorphosis. We watch the caterpillars grow gorgeous in their striped summer skin, their blind eye canes of antennae. Mornings, I take my coffee outside, examine each leaf, search for them, seek their preservation. My friend was killed, there is no other way to say it, by the man who once sat with her in the shade of the chalk maple, also gone, drought sensitive. Each morning, my search is a small pledge, an offer I cannot keep. She's not here to shop for shoes or feast on the old days when we stayed up nights talking about conversions. I want to rush to the end, to the caterpillar's metamorphosis. I keep hoping for a chrysalis, push myself toward the next stage, anxious for the caterpillars. Turns out the heat is killing them, the hottest summer on record. At 10, I'd never seen a milkweed, never seen a gun. How do any of us survive? There's a little poem about divorce in here too, because it's all about survival of change, right? We're all surviving change all the time. It's called Dating Again. Ice cream is friendly, and a couple of men find me irresistible. I line my eyes charcoal, clasp a string of costume around my neck. The mirror reflects a small joy. How this is like the way on my bedroom floor I played pickup sticks, colorful stabs held in a bunch, then released all those dangerous possibilities. I grew up on that floor, wearing headphones, drawing portraits of women, letting Zeppelin spin a whole lot of love through me. I got good at expression, dark, deeply serious eyes. The mouth may be God's greatest terminology. The mouth may be God's greatest technology. It's wordless terminologies, the muscle of kiss. Or maybe it's feet, the ability to walk away. I etched a sketching of my imagined house, porch, chimney, trees, pickets of painted wood wrapped around it all. Though I knew to be careful, one good shake and it all disappears. This is for Jim. He actually passed away in Tucson, Arizona. It seems only 3 years ago we began our goodbyes. Pray for me, you asked. And I had no idea how, or if I did, what it might accomplish. Instead, I heard myself say with a wish a good journey as we both listened to the call of a cactus wren. But it wasn't 3 years ago. Today marks 30 years ago. I walked that trail in Sabino Canyon, insects buzzing their work ethic, hawks bunting high against heaven, and placed a granite nugget in my pocket to lay beside the other miracles I collect, nests, feathers, driftwood. I will lay a stone on your stone, I had promised, although I never said it. I waited for you while you slept virused, fevered, as the hills went anguished amber, the sky turquoise, then deep water blue. You woke as the desert gave up its heat. In all these years, it's that blue halo of Tucson sky I remember the most, as though that light we sat in and the memory of it is the prayer you asked me for, the thing you sought. Deportation. I'm making my world smaller. Resolve to stop noticing detainees shuffled into sheriff vans, the unmarked buildings along the Detroit River. Resolve not to feel bereaved, numbed as a separated 6-year-old. I'm making my world smaller, finding beauty in the faceless butterfly, all wings and feelers, conspicuous flight. A little laugh at the wild turkey antics around the neighbor's deck. A note on the sidewalk that reads simply, yes. I'm taking a leap around the devastated islands, it being so big an ocean. Trying not to breathe in the fumes and ash, the acres of fire. I refuse to be consumed by the wild things seeking escape. The sonnet, they say, is the music of love. I'm listening. I'm listening. Yes, I'm making my world smaller. Eggplant and rosemary, red grapes, or maybe just peanut butter and jelly for dinner. I'm going to stop here. Thank you so much.
Tremendous. Fantastic reading again. Wow, such a moving piece of artwork for your friends. Wow, what a reading we have tonight. Thank you for sharing that, Joy. Our next reader is our last reader of the evening. Diana Dinverno's work has appeared in the Gyroscope Review, the Westchester Review, Mocking Heart Review, Panoply Magazine, the MacGuffin, and other publications. She's the recipient of the Michigan Poetry Society's 2019 Margot Lagatuda Memorial Award, the Barbara Sykes Memorial Humor Poem Prize, and the Muskegon Museum of Art's first place prize in its 2021 Art Talks Back Poetry Contest. Her work received a nomination for Best of the Net in 2020 and a Pushcart nomination in 2021. Diana writes and practices law in Southeast Michigan, and the title of her chapbook is When the Truth Comes Home to Roost. Please welcome Diana Dinverno.
Thank you for the introduction, Scott. And thanks to the Kalamazoo Friends of Poetry for selecting and publishing When Truth Comes Home to Roost. It's a thrill to see so many familiar faces and new to me faces and have the opportunity to read with Joy, Michelle, and Beth. I'm going to start with the first poem in the chapbook. 4th grade shoes. In August, I nodded when my mother asked if I liked the red, white, and blue shoes. Oxfords, she called them, suggesting a stylishness absent in the other sale bin options. I wore them the first day of 4th grade and every day thereafter, slipped them into galoshes when snow covered the road to and from school. My mother's sparkly ring, the one that sat on the shelf, disappeared. Above my head, the word pawn floated by. It wasn't intended for me. I didn't try to look it in the eye, and it too disappeared. The day my mother said, March has arrived with a wind-blown ruff, I found an A-line dress on the coverlet at the end of my bed. It had a white collar and cuffs. Its bodice and skirt were associated with Athena, the goddess of reason, which prompted me to question the reason an owl would need glasses. The dress would look perfect with the beaded choker I'd spotted in Grandma's button box, a candy tin, now mine, that held a magnifying glass on a frayed ribbon, and objects for inspection, thimbles, threaders, a shoe button hook, ration tokens, a hinged brass walnut to store a needle, a length of thread, and buttons of every kind, some attached to bits of fabric snipped from discarded clothes. The Oxfords were dingy, their blue suede stars scuffed. They didn't look right with the dress, its smart green parliament, the word for a collection of owls that had stopped my finger on the page and caused it to return to the description of the birds as solitary creatures. What would an owl, or Athena for that matter, say about that? What would she think of the shoes? I tried to clean them with a rag while my mother counted money into an envelope to pay for the delivery of heating oil to the rust-colored, the two small Mary Janes from the year before, squished every toe, buckled into my sacrifice. After the March blizzard, I stand in line at the post office while sunshine buttons coats, loosens scarves, thins ice above currents of longing. The 2-year-old circles my legs, the newborn strapped to my chest, frog-legged, as I clutch paperwork for passports so we can board a plane destined for Paris, attend a godchild's baptism, walk the Breton shoreline. Allow me to catch my breath far from these floor-to-ceiling windows, now flooding the space with too much light, droplets tracking my exposed neck, hair cropped in the wake of my mother's death. Finally, the clerk waves us to the counter, scans my birth certificate, says it's not enough. I examine the notary signature, its embossed seal, fail to see the defect. It was signed 7 years after you were born. My birth mother dragged her feet, I explained, before she gave me to her sister. It's a story I don't want to tell. Contours jagged, margins unclear. Plus, it isn't mine, is it? The clerk looks beyond my ravaged hair, pink cheeks, rill of perspiration. We need the court order. I hear chatter from the queue, impatience and laughter at my attempt to argue with the US Postal Service, and I think about my mother and her sister, fierce women I loved, whose choices carry me like a spring tide to this moment. And tomorrow, when I'll pack my daughters into the car, drive to a building a county away, park, pay, hope the document is found in its dusty file, then return here to face another line, this clerk. Amusement builds and I turn to glare, find only delighted faces fixed on my resourceful child, every stitch of her clothing discarded, waiting in this gene pool only because women with perfectly imperfect timing once felt heat beneath a March sun. Look, Mama, look at me. Rock, paper, scissors. My 12-year-old marches in from the backyard, holds a fist-sized rock with a tiny telltale red paint smudge. How could you, she asks. I'd scrubbed away its prior life as a kindergarten paperweight in a Marie Kondo purge the clutter moment and placed it with the Rocky family in a shaded corner of the garden. But when the scarlet pigment swirled in the sink, I'd felt a weight in my chest, like the time I said her oblong snowflakes wouldn't fit our window mullions. And after I demonstrated how to fold and cut perfection from a paper square saw my failure cover her face. The next poem is for my newly discovered cousins, and some of them are here this evening, which is just a delight. Celestial Navigation. They said my aunt worked for the BBC during the war, a fashionable woman, hat angled just so, who didn't talk about the past. When pressed, claimed her father was a lowlands Scottish farmer, her mother a Spanish opera singer, none of which was true, although they had landed in Scotland after escaping Memel, a Lithuanian port town on the Baltic, ceded to Hitler in 1939. She never told a soul her real name, where she began, what she left in Glasgow. Her father, who tutored Talmud scholars in a cold water flat, her tuberculotic mother, 7 little brothers and sisters, letters from Memel hinting what was to come, shattered glass, yellow stars, darkness swallowing every grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, including dear Rocco, fixed to memory with her A-line coat, hands tucked inside a muff. My aunt navigated by fear, never spoke of all those extinguished stars, unaware they would continue to glitter the night, find my eye, imprint their light, guide me to what she'd lost. Scattered family, patched hearts tattooed to chests, arms stretched skyward toward the exquisite hush, the overture, arias rise. And this is the final poem I'll read tonight. In 1,000 years, should someone unearth the wedding band cushioned in loam, just as dazzling as the day it was cast, polished, slipped on a finger for the first time, what will they think? When they brush away the dark soil, will they believe a woman had been careless as she walked beneath the ginkgos, or luckless when she set the ring on a sill and spied by a magpie lifted to a nest among leaves, gold yet weightless as breath, before tumbling into the steady accretion of years? Or lucky she discarded the token in long grass after betrayal, discovering it meant nothing but lost time? Or it could be something else entirely. 2 people who walked for miles, a lifetime, hands laced, in search of sweet pea blossoms, who sat down to rest and after eternity's blink, found themselves earth sifted between fingers. All possible, one no more probable than the next. The artifacts glitter, revealing so little truth of a life, its rich universe. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Wow, thank you so much, Diana. That was a tremendous reading. Your poems are so delightfully engaging and surprising. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of the wonderful poets for sharing your brilliant and moving work, and for reading so well. And it's just it's a thrill to be part of this. Thank you again. We have a few minutes if anyone has any questions for any of the poets about anything. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer those questions. Maybe the thing to do is post it in the chat, or I don't know if you can raise your hand if we have that ability to see that here. I do have a question for the poets. When did you know, any poet can answer this, when did you know that poetry was the medium for you? And how did you know?
answer it. How I do love to go up in a swing, up in the sky, so blue. Oh, I did think it's the loveliest thing ever. That was the first spark of how language can allow you to see something that's not actually there. And it just so excited me. And I really didn't start writing poetry until much later in life, when I had an incredible teacher, English teacher, who just exposed me to Lucille Clifton and Anne Sexton. And I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. That's how I want to communicate. Those things are what I want to communicate in my life. And so I just started reading everything I could and taking workshops and learning the craft, and it just was a natural fit.
Fantastic answer. Wonderful.
I can answer. For me, I moved around in schools a lot as an elementary student. And in third grade, I was in the third elementary school, and I got shyer and shyer. Trying to make new friends got harder and harder. And I just found that I was alone with my thoughts a lot. And so I started writing really early as sort of like it felt like a conversation with myself or something bigger, and whatever would answer me back. And that would be what I'd write. And so, just continued on all through school until I actually decided to go to school for writing. And yeah, it's something I've never stopped doing, even when it hasn't been my main focus. It's just the way I communicate with myself and about the world.
Fantastic, Beth. And I'm glad you spoke up, because you're sort of at the opposite end of Joy, where she started much later in life. But it clearly it's a form of art that is open to all of us at any time in our lives, and you guys are living proof of that. Nicely stated.
So I can share, Scott. I think, when I was a child, there was one volume of poetry on the bookshelf in my house, and it was Robert Frost. And I was an avid reader, but mostly fiction. But for some reason, when I was 12, when my sister was putting Huey Lewis and the News posters on the wall, I took a big poster board and wrote out "The Road Less Traveled" by Robert Frost on the poster, and that's what I put. We shared a bedroom, so that's what she got to look at. That was my contribution. And I remember in high school too, in an English class, having an assignment to have to write a sonnet. And I still remember the energy and the excitement and the thrill and the joy of having to write the sonnet, and also how challenging it was and how much I loved that. So there were those little moments. I did an incredible amount of reading as a young person, but I didn't do an incredible amount of writing. Anytime I did write, though, even when it was horrible, I always had teachers and professors encouraging me to continue. So I think I'm always have been writing in my mind, and I just have finally made time in my life to do it, to make it a focus, to make it, something that I'm going to put my energy towards and not in the back burner.
Fantastic. I like what you said about always writing in your mind. I think if there was a way, if we could transcribe our thoughts into language, it would look much more like poetry than anything else, right? So very cool.
I can add something as well. I have viewed myself as a fiction writer, writing both short fiction and long fiction, and I had worked a very long time on a novel, and I got to a point where I sort of put it away. And I had been dabbling a little bit with poetry, and people told me that, for any writer, they should be able to write poetry, because it's an exercise that requires you to make sure that every word counts. And I think that's true. And so once I put the fiction away and I started working on poetry, I found it so satisfying. And I tend to write more prose poetry, but it really does make you focus on utilizing what's in your arsenal, and making sure that each one of those words that you choose are useful and the right ones. So it's been a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And very wise words too. Thank you again to everyone. Anyone else have a question? I don't know if I saw any posted or any hands up raised anywhere. If not, we can let everyone go to their respective dinners and celebrations. This was a fantastic reading. Thank you all so much again for showing up and supporting your poets, your friends, your family, and poetry in general. I think this is one of the most important kinds of art at any time, but particularly at this time in the world right now. And so thank you for keeping it alive.
Where will people find the recording?
That is a good question.
I think it will be posted on our Friends of Poetry's Facebook page, probably Instagram, and then also on our website, which I will share that URL with everyone.
Yes, and check the chat again to contact the poets about purchasing their books. And we look forward to seeing many of you again soon at our next reading, which will be probably in about a year. So
Thank you, Scott. Thank
thank
you,
you all.
everyone.
Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful evening.